I grew up in Madawaska, Maine, or outside of Madawaska, Maine, in a little town called St. David. I was born in Caribou, Maine, which is where my mother was teaching at the time. And we moved shortly thereafter to a home that my parents bought in St. David. And we call it the Concessions of St. David because it's sort of the boondocks of that little town. It's sort of an interesting region. There's a lot of back and forth between the two borders. I have lots of family members who are Canadian who live in New Brunswick on the other side of the border. People work on one side of the border and live on the other, and that there's a lot of interchange that way. People who live in the St. John River Valley in some ways identify more strongly with that particular region than they do with either country, meaning Canada or the United States. You're from the St. John Valley, or you're from Madawaska, or you're from the Fort Kent Allagash region. And you'll say that first before you would say, oh, I'm Canadian or American. When I grew up in Madawaska, it was sort of, in some ways, the decline of our language up there. We were starting to lose use of the language. A lot of the younger generation, my generation included, kids were growing up and speaking English in the home, which was different than in my parents' generation. They spoke only French when they were kids in the home. And actually, when my father was growing up, I think he was one who experienced this. But in the schools, they were discouraging students from speaking French because there was an effort to assimilate to this, American English standard. When I think about the future of the Northern Forest region, I certainly have many hopes. I think one of the issues that people talk about when they talk about problems or issues facing the Northern Forest region is the idea of a brain drain, and not only a brain drain, but just young people leaving these northern areas for whatever reason. Often, I guess some of the reasons listed are not enough jobs or culture or whatever it is that people say, and so they leave these northern regions and go further south in whatever state. And I think that's a phenomenon that's true in Maine as well as New Hampshire and Vermont and New York as well. It's odd because part of learning to appreciate the region is leaving it and realizing what else is out there, and then eventually, hopefully, coming back.